Thank you, everybody, for coming out to Growler Gallery at Sudwerk Brewing. This is a third Thursday event. We've been hosting different. Hello, hello, hello. Hopefully that doesn't keep happening. We've been hosting different artists every month, local artists who display their work. And we have an opening and interview. The interviews are on YouTube. I need to put a QR code or something up to the channel. They all have like 10 views. So blowing up. And then also every artist does a workshop here in this room, which is open for any skill level. We'll talk more about that in a bit. But this month, I'm extremely excited to welcome an incredibly talented local artist whose style is rooted in traditional methods and real-life observation. You can find him doing caricatures, watercolors, or oil paintings at local haunts around Davis. Some of you probably already know him. Let's welcome Evan Thomas Lilley.
Thank you very much.
Very excited to have you. You grew up here in Davis, and then you attended UC Davis for undergrad. That's right?
Correct, yeah.
And I was wondering how you think Davis, what sort of an environment is it for a young artist? Do you think that Davis kind of fostered your creativity?
Absolutely, because it already has a good history of plenty of artistic institutions. There's UC Davis that had teachers such as Robert Arneson and Wayne Thibault. Yeah. There's also plenty of galleries. We got the Natsulis, we got the Pens, we got the Artery, we got the Gregory Condos, we now have Minetti Shrem, and now the Secret Spot. So yeah, there are a lot of really great locations for it. In fact, like even one of the first places I learned oil in a class was at the community center. So it is a very good town to do it in.
Right on. In your childhood and teens, what sort of media, what sort of art, what kind of visual media were you consuming that was inspiring you? What was catching your eye and kind of inspiring you to start to be interested in art when you were young?
Well, I'd say like for many kids in America, I'd say it was for me it was a lot of comic books.
Yeah.
I was a big fan of like the usual Sunday funnies like Far Side, Calvin and Hobbes, Garfield, and also like the series Tintin. That's also a big influence that I tried to spend a lot of time trying to get that style in as well. And I think only fine arts came a little bit later, but there were a few seeds in the form of the works of, say, I think it was Albrecht Dürer. He was one of my first influences, and then it was people like Gustav Klimt and sort of individuals like that. And that's when things gradually go into the more traditional fine art stuff.
Yeah, I found so much inspiration in Watterson, Bill Watterson, Calvin Hobbes' work. His ink work, like with I don't even know what kind of pen he was using, but the way that it was very gestural, and I can picture perfectly the bark that he drew on birch trees and the watercolors he drew for the covers. Very inspirational. I think that we end up seeking a lot of inspiration in comics when we're young, and it definitely made it into my style. I can see it made it into like all these scenes.
Well, yeah, it definitely changed over time. I think actually Watterson, I think he used one of those quills that you actually have to dip it into, which is very tedious, but I can also see why it gets a much more looser stroke there. I've tried it myself. It's not that easy.
Yeah.
But I think he also, he was classically trained where, I think at some point, I remember reading that he drew, or he painted the Sistine Chapel in his own room ceiling.
Wow. Wait, Bill Watterson did that?
Yeah, that's the story that I heard, that he painted on his own ceiling.
That's crazy.
Probably not the same, of course, not the same size and maybe not the same quality, but definitely he had the chops for it.
Yeah, absolutely. Gosh, the dinosaurs you paint in the Sundays. Woo. Okay, so what artists are you looking at now? Who are you learning from? Who are you keeping an eye on?
Myself, I'm trying to learn what the heck I am doing. But some of them that I've been trying to learn from at the moment, I'd say, are these kinds of people I never thought I would have been getting into at some point. One is actually, I took a class from, his name's Devin Cecil Wishing. He's like the epitome of discipline and technique and the scientific understanding of how vision works. Another one I'd say I'm learning from is a guy called just one of those the French academics of 19th century, Jean-Léon Gérôme. He has a lot of really excellent quality where he's at that point when artists have developed enough institutions to build on skills, and then you get to these incredibly impeccable works that are so pristine, so precise, so realistic, that at some point it becomes kind of like they almost become the gatekeepers, and then you get impressionists saying, hey, screw that guy.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, detail always rises to the point of getting photographic, and then everyone's like, I'm just gonna paint on this canvas and call it art.
Exactly, yeah.
Do you mostly consume or enjoy or keep your eyes on art that looks like yours, or are there artists that you're looking at that do completely different styles, something less representational or abstract? Or is it mostly taking inspiration from artists that are doing what you want to be doing?
Well, I definitely try to take a lot of influences from the people that I'd say I'd like the most, but I kind of also have this feeling that it's always good to look at people who have styles and methodologies that are so different from my own. I even kind of like to think that I need to look at artists who are not actually artists, and actually think people like musicians and scientists, engineers, and certain business people, because I think art is very much interdisciplinary because it's about a whole lot of other things.
You're Davis's very own Da Vinci. I love reading the descriptions around the room and reading how music makes its way into your work and inspires your pieces. So let's talk about the two styles that are happening in this room. We've got the more gestural watercolor paintings in the black frames, and then we also have these very, very realistic oil paintings on canvas. Can you talk about the differences between these two techniques, and then also how they inform one another?
Well, I mean, they are incredibly different, and I've sort of like to think of it as a way of being able to have my cake and eat it too. Because one thing I've seen so many artists do these days who are professional, quote unquote, they always seem to have a particular kind of brand or very specific method they can only focus on. And so I've tried to liberate myself from that idea by being able to do these completely opposite ways. So for example, this piece here, this is what I would call result-minded, because you have a very specific endpoint and you have to be very careful and slowly get up to it. That's a very old conventional way of how a lot of art works. And the watercolors are the exact opposite, where you're more process-minded, where you think of a certain way of how you make it, and you don't really care what it ends up looking like in the end. And it's really great for working plein air in some of these locations, because so much is definitely changing. There's not exactly a guarantee of how much time you're going to have. And it's a very fun way to work with this kind of stuff. But it also allows me to exercise my knowledge of color, figures, lighting, and composition. And then I'm able to use those ideas for when I start working on these as well.
Yeah, absolutely. With the watercolors, you can observe the little the human body positions, the lighting, the shadows, and then use that to inform these big paintings. I really like that idea of the result-based paintings and then the process-based. I'm gonna think about that when I go into painting. I think the next time I paint, I'm gonna be like, am I goal-oriented, or is my process more important right now?
Yeah, there's a very good example of a composer, I think John Cage. He's the guy who wrote a song that's complete silence, 3 minutes, 44 seconds. And his idea is that he tried to ask a photographer, can you design me a camera that changes settings randomly each time? He said, yeah, but how do you know if the picture's going to be good? And he says, I don't know, and I don't care.
Wow. 3-minute silent song. That's constantly on at my end. So what draws you to paint and draw in these chaotic, loud, crowded bars?
Well, I think they're very interesting to me personally because Davis naturally has a very large student population, and a lot of the people that I used to know back in UCD would occasionally go to these places. And I also started thinking about them conceptually because, when I'm growing up as a kid and I see the way that adults act when they're just by themselves versus when they're working a job, or they use a certain kind of cadence, it felt so weird the way that people talk to you.
Yeah.
It's like I'm thinking, is that a different kind of life form?
Yeah.
It's like everything it says seems so strange. And yet they're really just saying, hello, welcome to Safeway, can I take your order, please? Yeah. And it just seems like a strange way that people act. But at bars, like, that doesn't seem to be that same kind of standard that they have. And they also, I think bars to me, they almost represent anti-productivity.
Yeah.
Because they're one of the few places where you go and you don't feel like you're supposed to look busy.
Yeah.
Because like if you go to a cafe place, like the Phil's scene, everyone has to be on their laptop studying or doing something productive for work. But when you're at the bar, it doesn't feel like that same kind of expectation is being made of you. So you get to see a really interesting way of how people interact with each other.
Yeah, that's a really great way of putting it. Yeah, it's the social hub, but people are drinking and relaxing and trying to do anything but be orderly.
Yeah, it's also even a common thing in sitcoms, where it's a sociological term called the third space, where it's a space that isn't work, it's not your home. And a lot of times in sitcoms, it's a place where you get to meet all the characters in one place, but at the same time, you get the freedom to introduce someone new into the mix. And it's sort of like that way of how people get to meet someone new in a sort of a easy to expect way.
Yeah, it's like familiarity, but with the possibility of some sort of surprise. Yeah.
Yeah, precisely. Yeah.
So what are some of the challenges that arise when you've got your art supplies out in a place full of people who might be drunk?
I'd say the biggest challenge. I think that it's an interesting thing because the challenge is the inherent reason that I'm there is that I'm always adjusting to something that's changing, such as there's usually one table full of people that I don't know if how much longer they're going to be there. Like I get this sense that they're about to leave. So what I'll probably do is I'm not going to draw them. I'm just going to let them leave and then just draw whoever takes their table. And another thing is like if the lighting changes, I'm just going to work from memory. Or if there's an empty space somewhere in the composition, I just fill it with something or with a fictional person or item in there. And one thing that you actually might notice a lot that I do in some of the compositions, I'll just put in some dogs playing on the floor somewhere. That's something I just like to do to fill in. So I really do abuse my artistic license quite a lot in these paintings.
Yeah, I mean that's also like where your style comes into play.
Yeah.
It really lights up the scenes. They're so lively. I especially love the turquoise and purples in the one that's behind you.
Yeah, actually, the one challenge that happens is when there's not many people there. Because it's like season episode 1 of The Twilight Zone, where it's like, hey, where is everybody? Yeah. And then I have to just sort of invent a whole crowd of imaginary people.
Are there a lot of people coming up and getting curious, asking questions, trying to look over your shoulder while you're painting or drawing?
Absolutely, yeah, because I think that one thing that's changed arts these days is that they've become more performance-centered, where we see time-lapse videos online very often, and more people are interested in like the process of making the work rather than the end point. Yeah. So I've kind of decided that I'm not just someone who's making paintings that people see afterwards. I'm also performing the act of making a painting.
So you welcome that idea, the performance aspect of it.
Yeah, I kind of feel I kind of see that as part of the work. Kind of like I'm almost just like the guy who performs guitar on the street. Like I'm like an art busker.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's awesome. I think sometimes artists will frown at the idea of performance being a part of art, but to each their own. And also, I mean, like when I live paint at events, I like the attention.
No, there's actually great precedence for that because like in ancient Greece, it was very common for artists to have their studios in these open spaces where just anyone could walk up and say, So what you doing there? You're making a nice little pottery there, huh? Yeah, I know all that's done. And of course, the potters were always going to each other. This guy doesn't know anything. Why do we do this?
Every time I'm painting a mural or painting live, someone or multiple people come up and say, "You missed the spot," and then they laugh like they're the first person in the world I've ever seen.
Yeah.
I've gotten it dozens and dozens and dozens of times.
Yeah, it's almost even worse when I'm trying to do caricatures, because you always have someone coming back behind the picture and saying, "Hey, he's giving you tentacles in your mouth," to the customer, which, just no.
So they don't say tentacles.
So they will say worse things before.
So how would you compare painting plein air? Plein air means being there in person and drawing or painting with observation of the stuff that's actually in front of you, versus taking a photograph, going home, and then trying to replicate the photograph. Which do you prefer, I guess, and how do they influence each other?
Well, I don't want to say I prefer either one because I want to be able to do both. But I will say the watercolors, they're much like a casual dance, like where I'm just interacting with the scene. Is kind of like my partner. I adjust to it and I always make a nice little decision. And it's very fun, inventive. I get to change things like how I feel all the time, and I get to make something really new. And I don't get to feel too bad if it doesn't look that good because, like the materials aren't that difficult to work with as oil. But when I'm working with oil from a photo reference, it is like self-imposed exile. It's like, "Hark, for I have found an idea, and into exile I must go. I must now take all the water I can, download all the podcasts, and I will be seen no more."
That makes sense, and it must take forever. These are worth permitting for.
Yeah, precisely, yeah.
So you graduated with a degree in fine art from UCB.
Mm-hmm.
And you also attend online classes at Grand Central Atelier, a renowned school in New York. Very cool. I raised my eyebrows. So I'm curious, what sort of education did each of those schools offer, and which one do you think works better for your style or this kind of work that you want to create?
I'm a little embarrassed to say this. I don't feel like I learned as much from UCD because I had to split my time with so many other classes. They were interesting classes from the humanities, social sciences, and such, but I kind of felt like I was dealing with a lot of stuff at the time. And so I don't feel like I was able to absorb it well. But with Grand Central Atelier, the learning is much more condensed and much more precise. And I was it was just a very different circumstance. But it's just like I said. One is specified and condensed. The other is much more general education. Yeah. But I learned from GCA via Zoom, which is very not exactly much of a social life. But it has been very rewarding, and I really do wish I could have learned about them much earlier. I gotta say.
Yeah, ateliers or at least GCA is more focused on kind of traditional means, craftsmanship, accuracy. Whereas I went to art school at UC, and it was a lot more about theory or asking questions about why we create art. But a lot of installation art. Everyone loves installation, I guess, right now. Did you find that to be true?
Well, I'd say that a lot of it is somewhat traditional, but I think it's also more appropriate to say, again, like condensed, because there are a lot of traditional techniques that they're probably not focusing on. The first thing they tell you is that, well, some traditional people learn it this way, but we learn it this way. And they even told me, one of the teachers told me that we saw this school from the East Coast, and we thought, well, those are beautiful paintings that they're doing. But then they step up and they say, wait a minute, this isn't our method. Heretics! Yeah, there is some kind of very strict rules of what you can or what they think you can and cannot do.
So what do you think it is about oil painting and oil paintings of people that has made it such a timeless art form. Why do you think that people have been pursuing the same craft for so many hundreds of years? And also, how does it feel to be a part of that tradition?
Well, I think it's mainly just I think it's partially just the fascination with history, because a lot of people just want to know what was life back then, and these paintings that depict things more realistically are used for that. So that's part of the fascination.
Historical,
yeah, exactly. Another reason, one thing when I think about the personally what it's like, it's a combination of frustration because it's not easy at all, very high standards. But when I read about the personal lives of some of these artists, I'm thinking, wait a minute, that's just like me. Because I remember, like, some of these artists, they have this issue where they do get bored during the process. Like, I was telling you earlier about Rubens having a guy that he paid just to read Latin in the background of the workshop. So he basically had a human podcast speaking. And then there was this other artist, I believe, it was a Sir Joshua Lawrence. He painted like the Queen of England and the Duke of Wellington. Like, he was completely talented, but he has that problem where when you spend too much time on art, you don't learn anything else. And this led to him being really awful with his relationships. So just, he tried dating these two sisters, where he dated one, then he broke it off, and then he dated the other, and then he broke it off again, and then he dated the first one again.
Wow.
And then the first one...
That's just like you.
Not yet. But yeah, and the first one then said on her deathbed to her sister, "Don't marry Joshua."
Josh, you dog. So there's a lot of pressure on artists right now to create Instagram reels and TikToks, and to have kind of and to use social media as a platform for exhibition and for selling work and for networking. How do you engage with all of that, and how do you think it affects the greater art culture?
I think it's something I definitely still struggle with, but I've come to realize that for plenty of people, it's the amount of likes and subscribers is the only bit of feedback they get. It's not very accurate, it's not very realistic, but it's still like the only kind of ever-present measurement of what they're doing. And I definitely think there needs to be taught a little bit more, like an objective idea of what you're actually supposed to use it for. You can definitely use it for a whole lot of things, but I've seen a lot of artists do this thing where they kind of end up having like alter ego personas.
Yeah.
Like there's one guy who's just all cross-hatching celebrities. There's even another Instagrammer whose main thing is painting with a Japanese sword. That's their whole deal.
Wow.
So yeah, they're kind of turning into like these strange, very niche rock star personas.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of that performance thing you were talking about, but also there's like using, a lot of times Instagram is kind of our only means of selling art to strangers. And the people who are getting seen on Instagram are making those kind of videos and having those kind of, I guess gimmicks is one thing, is one way to put it, but like sometimes people are actually really passionate about what they're doing. But yeah, anyway, crazy stuff, weird culture, crazy online. Speaking of which, to what degree have you engaged with AI, and are you worried about it, and how do you think that's going to affect art in the future?
I'm still thinking about like what AI is actually going to do, because I don't want to be against the development of technology, but I also realize that anytime something new technology gets involved or invented, if it's successful, it means that a lot of people are losing their jobs to it. And they don't really get the benefits of that creation as much.
Yeah, the trouble with losing your job to a robot is you still have to find a job. You don't just get to chill out because the robot's doing it.
Exactly, but I also think back to like the inventing of the printing press, where like as much as we're happy to have all of these books and ways to share information, but before it was invented, you had these huge colleges of all these scribes who were paid to write these books. It was like thousands of people were employed to do this, and I think there are even stories about like when it was being first used, like the scribes were actually trying to destroy the printing presses.
Oh, I bet they were.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's something different though about like the source material being created by a computer, right? Like, yeah. Well, anyway.
No, that's definitely, I think, because like some artists' work are getting stolen. I would definitely say that's one of like the bad ways that it's being used, that it's not compensating people for the use of their pictures. I think there's going to be some use that artists could use for it, but I don't know if it's really been invented or used yet. Because I think it's more just inventors saying, look what I can do.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's funny that AI is like starting to become pretty recursive because they source images for their kind of like, when AI is making art or it's making these funky images, it sources all of its imagery from Google, and now a lot of Google is AI art, so it's sourcing from itself, and they're becoming like increasingly grotesque, like these images of people with fingers coming out of their elbows and eyeballs in the wrong places. That's fun. I'm down for that. I want more grotesque people because AI is failing.
Yeah, I mean, it's cool if you're trying to do it on purpose, but kind of embarrassed when you said, draw me one hand, then it draws you six.
Yeah. Okay, so looking back in time, if you could give your young self, say 10 years ago, like earlier in your art career, some advice, what would you say?
I would probably say try to be a little bit more curious about other artworks. Be a little bit more bold with trying to do new things. And I'd also say look up all these different kinds of artists and read more about how they work, because I think
give yourself a reading list.
Yeah, basically a reading list. But then back then I'd probably say, screw you! You can't give me more homework, me.
I'm not doing homework for myself. Phenomenal.
All right, but then I'd also say, okay, so buy early in NFTs, then sell immediately.
Yeah. Oh.
I'd be so rich.
Gosh. No,
Also,
yeah, or Bitcoin just in general. I knew someone like junior high school or high school kids who were buying shit they shouldn't have been on the dark web who like bought a Bitcoin in 2011 and they just ended up with so much money. That's what I would tell myself. I agree. Are there any big projects, major pivots, anything that you have coming up that you're excited about and want to promote?
Absolutely, because on August 8th, right here at Sudwerk's, I will be doing a caricature class right here. We'll get to learn to draw some really nice cartoony faces, exaggerate features. It's going to be a lot of fun.
And I heard that you get a free drink with your ticket?
Yes, and then you give that free drink to me, and then you're in.
Wait, and also all the supplies are included? Is that right?
Yes, they're all included. You just need to buy them and bring them here.
That's crazy. Oh my god, a 2-hour class for only $20 with all the supplies included and a free drink. I hope we see a bunch of these faces there. It's going to be a lot of fun. Well, Evan, it has been amazing learning about your beautiful mind and your incredible in-person, in-depth, detail-oriented process.
But come on, you can tell me.
We actually replaced all the artwork with replicas.
Oh no!
Thank
you lied to me.
Yeah, it's telling that you didn't notice. So I really appreciate you being here, and thanks for sharing your work, and thank you for being present in the Davis community, like out and about, documenting the town and the culture that we call home. There's so much warmth and nostalgia in a lot of these places that I've frequented. So it's really cool to know that someone's out there recording it, and someone who has a lot of talent and a lot of style. So thank you so much.
And I want to say thank you very much for not making fun of my sailor hat.
I never, ever would.
Thank you.
Thank you, Evan.
Thank you very much.
And I'd also like to ask if anyone has any questions. Now would be a great time. If there's anything you've ever wondered about your friend, your son, feel free. Cool.
Oh, okay. Question.
When you're doing oil paintings, do you have a certain process or a style or technique while you're doing it? Like underpainting layers or ala prima or something? A certain technique?
Yeah, absolutely. There is a process. Just the first thing to do is to go over with draw the underlying image with a pencil.
On white?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But then I apply a layer of usually like a ground of usually burnt sienna, burnt umber, or whatever color is going to match the color of the result. Then I try to think about the values like on 1 to 10 of like how dark and light everything is. Then I usually try to draw a place or a block in the locations that probably have the largest amount of mass, like the floor and then the black of this counter here. And then gradually get into the more smaller locations.
Broad to specific. Nice.
Exactly, yeah.
Any other questions?
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry, Stephanie.
When are you going to teach a beginner oil painting class?
Well, I think it's a very complicated thing because oils can be they are a little bit dangerous, so I want to be sure that I can teach it in a way that's approachable but also safe. It is not a painting, or it's not that easy to learn, especially when some people actually might be scared of it. So I keep hearing stories like cadmium, lead, mercury, and really expensive money. So,
Yeah, oil painting is definitely dangerous. You're likely to get addicted and then say goodbye to all your money.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you so much, Evan, and thanks everybody for coming out.
Thank you very much.
I hope to see you guys next third Thursday. It's easy to remember because of the alliteration. We'll have another artist up. I don't think we've got someone booked right now, but we'll figure it out. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. All right.
It was a pleasure.
Very
Great
good.
work, dude.